I don't know how to open this one, partially because I'm oddly nervous about ticking people off. Not because I think I'm actually going to say anything that puts my foot in my mouth. It's just, I don't know. Anime and manga fans, I'm very bad at predicting their reactions to things, so I don't know. But I want to talk about Uzumaki. The first episode is out, dubbed in English, or you can watch it in the original Japanese with subtitles. This is an adaptation of but certainly I think the most famous long form piece that legendary horror manga artist and writer Junji Ito has ever done. His single most famous piece might be the Enigma of Amagara Fault, but for long form, because that was a short piece, Uzumaki's probably his best known piece. And I watched the first episode. I believe there's going to be 4 total. I'll probably watch them, but I was watching it and something wasn't quite clicking. And it was one of those things that I found myself thinking about even into the following morning. Now, that's happened to me with Junji Ito stuff before, but it's because the ideas or the imagery like wormed into my head, and they can be hard to shake sometimes. Junji Ito is a lot. But that wasn't what was going on. Just trying to figure out where is the issue? What is it that isn't quite working here? And part of me wondered if it was just familiarity, because I am familiar with Uzumaki. So was the problem just like I already knew what a lot of this stuff was and where it was going? I don't think that was it, because granted I didn't read start to finish, but I kind of browsed through some Junji Ito stuff, from the manga page after watching this when I was trying to figure this out, and I was like, no, this still feels pretty effective. So I think I've nailed it, and it's something that I've actually kind of talked about before, because this is an incredibly loyal adaptation. And frankly, looks gorgeous. It was a very wise thing to keep it in black and white the way that the original manga was. I think adding color would have diluted the power of what it was doing. It would have made it harder to focus on what you're actually meant to focus on if you had all these colors added into everything. The black and white really always draws your attention to the spirals, which are the recurrent the recurrent visual motif and primary theme of how everything is going to go to absolute hell, and already is. So the problem is in the core adaptational change from manga to anime and just the nature of those mediums, because this is a case where the adaptation doesn't miss anything. It's not fundamentally, it's not messing with the formula. It's just translating it one-to-one. But I've talked before about how translating one-to-one still comes with problems, as much as some fans will praise it for being so loyal. And it's because of the core difference in the mediums. There are some things that a certain medium can do that another medium either can't do as well or can't do at all. And here specifically, it's about time. What I mean by that is when you read Junji Ito's work, you can linger and look for as long as it compels you on any single image. And one of the things about Junji Ito's stuff, especially his more horrifying images, they are really hard to pull your eyes away from. You will lose track of how long you stare at some of those images. But when you put it in animation and it's just moving, there is a limit. It's however long they chose to hold that shot. That's as long as you get. I talked about this in a lot more detail in the video that I did on Zack Snyder's Watchmen. But this, I think, is really interesting to think about, because I don't even think necessarily that Junji Ito, would have and I'm not saying this like he doesn't know his own strengths, but I think it's one of those things so inherent to the medium that I think a lot of people don't stop and think about it. I don't necessarily stop and think about it until I have a comparison like this or Zack Snyder's Watchmen, which used the comic book pages basically as a storyboard. The way in which things pass through time impacts the way that you can read this. And as I said, when you are reading Junji Ito and you look at something, your eyes are going to lock on to stuff like that tongue, like the spiral with the eye. I mean, if you've read Uzumaki or even if you've just seen the anime, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to share specific images of these things. It'll probably get me demonetized. That stuff, or in the circular barrel, in the tub, whatever it is, those images you can lock onto, and for as long as they have their claws in you, and in the case of Junji Ito, if his stuff works for you, those things will lock into you and hold you for a while. And you'll be stuck there just staring at it. But when it's anime, yeah, it's the same image, but you can't just stare at it for as long as it holds your attention. The creators have decided how long it should hold your attention, and then when the next thing kicks in. When I talked about Watchmen, I talked before about how the nature of, well, I was talking about comic books, but comic books, manga, and stuff like that, part of the nature of that is the creator has to be willing to relinquish a certain amount of control of the pacing, because they can't control at what point or after how long a pause the reader turns the page or looks from one panel to the next. There are things that they can do to try and mediate a certain pace. When I talked about Watchmen, I talked about the 9-panel grid, how that sets a rhythm and is a way for a writer and an artist to exert some control over the pace. But they can't have total control, not the way you can in television and film, where you have 100% control over how long somebody sees something. And the thing is, while that can be an issue sometimes, if you want things to land at a specific pace, at other times, that is 100% a benefit. That it's up to the reader to decide when they're done looking at something. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be horror like it is with Junji Ito. You get classic comic book artists. Well, I say classic. It's, going back to the 80s and the 70s, so not golden age. But you get an artist like George Perez who would do these massive sprawling spreads with so many characters in it, and you could just stare at it forever for the detail and how much was in there. That is a benefit of the medium, that you can just keep taking it in until you're done with it. And that is a benefit that Junji Ito's work very much has. That you can just keep looking. You can linger in the moment of horror until you are done. And I don't think the things that you gain from an anime adaptation, the major ones being motion, voice work, and music, while in other cases, those additions might be enough to make up for the loss of that aspect, depending on the nature of the original work. In the case of Junji Ito, I don't think it is. I don't think those specific horrifying images are any more effective for being in motion. In fact, a lot of the ones that are recreating the most iconic horrifying moments are fairly static. Like, there's a little bit of motion, not a ton, because the original image, it didn't need it, and it was incredibly effective. And I don't think the loss of that is made up for by hearing people scream or having the tense music. And like, the voice work is fine and the music is fine. But there's something about his work that thrives on the page, where you can either linger if it really gets its hooks into you, or if it repels you, which that's a valid experience, you can flip past it as quickly as you need to. You decide the pace at which he grips you. And that just pulls you in all the more in a way that I don't think an adaptation this loyal can recreate. Because as I talked about in the Watchmen video, when you take something that takes really good advantage of the specific aspects and strengths of its original medium, translating it to a medium that doesn't have those same strengths, you need to do more adaptational changes to come up with an equivalent that works in the new medium. Or you need to otherwise alter the story and presentation in a way where it doesn't necessarily need those same benefits anymore. And that's why super loyal adaptations in general tend to have problems. But this is, I think, a really good example of something that is core, at least I think, is core to Junji Ito's work that you can't replicate in an anime. It's literally impossible. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that out there. As I said, I'll probably watch the rest of this. I don't expect to make another video on it because I expect it to be this loyal, and I expect my thoughts to basically be the same as they already are. But like I said, this thought process stuck with me, so I wanted to put it out there. So thanks so much for listening to me. Whatever your thoughts on Uzumaki, original or anime, or both, go ahead and drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about them. And Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. Like and share and subscribe, maybe. Those help me out. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. And now to give thanks to my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfula, Goddess Elida, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Oliver B., Melissa Pedersen, Movie Turtle, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Melinda Walters, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Bernabi Lex the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Kasparov, Dave Hall, Quite Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Adam RDL Taylor, Pau Baraba Jago, Mira G, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. I don't know, it feels right that it's October the first time you're seeing all three of these at the same time.